Hello, everyone. This is The Critics. I want to welcome you, your 200 plus live audience members, and those who will be joining us during the replay. Welcome to our new episode of The Critics. I want to tell you first that this is a podcast that is about critically examining how we can improve leadership supported with data and maybe even have some fun doing it. I'm Vinay Raman, and I'm the host of this episode. I'm also the CEO of Karma, the sponsor of this show. We're an effectiveness company. And what that means is we use data, facts, and visuals like you'll see throughout the course of this podcast, how to become better as a leader. The results, better recruiting, better retention, productivity, and profitability. In fact, we even have a 100% money back guarantee that'll make a difference. And I think you'll get some nuggets today that'll help you see how that data can help you become better. But today is our 18th episode. And our episode this month is focused on curiosity. But this is interactive, it's live. And these episodes are not as much fun as when we get our audience involved. So before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to hear from our live audience. You should see on the right-hand side of your screen a comment box. In that comment box, whether you're connecting from Europe, from Asia, from North America, it really doesn't matter. Wherever you're connecting from, I would love to see where you're connecting in from, because if anything, it makes the audience, makes the panel more engaged in this discussion. It just makes it a whole heck of a lot more fun. So type in the comment box now where you're connecting in from. Next, I'd like to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to start first with Connie Fief. Connie is the founder and chairman of the Fief family of brands. She's the queen visionary and the CEO of Talent Concierge Artist Agency. She has built multiple businesses while empowering ambitious entrepreneurs. Her passion project is the Born Life Foundation, where benefactors are young adults aging out of the foster system. So you can find out a little bit more. That's just a brief snapshot into who she is. But you can find out more about Connie in the comment section. We'll drop a link to her bio in just a couple of moments here. Connie, I want to kind of check in with you first. How are you today? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling fabulous, excited to be here, and excited to learn from all of our other panelists.
Yeah, I think this should be a good interactive dialogue between all of us. Let me go next to Fourth. Fourth guides successful entrepreneurs who live for the next rush, the next deal, the next relationship that will skyrocket them to the next level. He is passionate about coaching leadership teams because he knows what it's like to be in their seats, have huge visions, and feel bogged down in the day-to-day minutia of the business. I'm laughing here, Fourth, because I feel like that's me. You can find out more about Fourth and who he is and what he does in the comments. We'll drop a link to his bio there as well. Fourth, good to see you again as always. How's the world looking for you today?
Hey, Vinay, thanks for having me. World looks great from here in beautiful Southern Pines, North Carolina. Got a great week ahead of some exciting retreats with a couple clients, so really looking forward to that. But mostly looking forward to talking to you guys today, learning from these great new panelists, and just grateful to be a part of this. I've been watching it for a long time and following your progress, Vinay. Really excited to see how far you've come, and just think we'll be a part of it.
It has been a journey indeed.
Yeah.
and it hasn't always been exactly the way I wanted it to be either. Next, and so finally, and not least, last or least, is Michael Satterman. Michael has worked with purpose-driven brands for over 20 years, mostly in marketing and advertising. As the Chief Creative Officer for Satterman Connect, he helps unite the executive team with a customer-centric vision so that all departments work together to support this viewpoint and deliver a consistent experience. You can also find more about Michael in the comments as well. We'll drop a link there in just a couple of moments. Michael, good to have you. It's been a while since we've chatted. How are you feeling? Ready to get started?
Oh, Vinay, I'm always geared up. You know me. I arrive caffeinated or under caffeinated and just fake it till I make it. So excited to hear what the audience has to ask and where myself and our panelists can serve them.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to the interactivity. That's actually, to me, probably the most rewarding part of these podcasts is all the questions that I thought I had taken for granted, and is when we get a question, I was like, oh, I had never thought of that before. So to that end, in the comments, I'd like people to type in where they're connecting from. We've got a couple people who've typed in already. I'd like to continue to see more because just as a show of support for our panelists and the time that they've taken here to share some of these insights with you, please type into the comment box. So to get us kicked off, I love stories. Even as I've gotten older, I just love a good story. So I'm going to start off with a story here. I'm a father to 3 kids, and they ask me questions. They lean into curiosity all the time. And I feel like that curiosity gives me a window into the way that they're thinking, just like the questions in my personal life and also in your professional life. Those questions that are asked, I think, in organizations are not only just to build mastery all times, sometimes they're just about building rapport. So this story, and you've probably heard this type of story before, why should I do my math homework? Why should I do my social skills? Because they could be playing outside, they would rather do that. And I think upon deeper introspection, first I thought it was just they were trying to avoid their homework. And after I started to think more and more about it, they didn't necessarily understand the relevance in achieving their goal, of whether they want to be an engineer, a psychologist, a veterinarian, whatever else. That curiosity gives me a window into where my kids are and how they're thinking. So this whole episode is about curiosity and how to foster that curiosity within your organization. Fourth, I'll start with you, kind of as an opening thought. What maybe from that story, just kind of this concept of curiosity. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love that question. I love that story. We talk about curiosity. When you're talking about your kids and asking questions about why can't I do this? Why do I have to do this now, as opposed to what I'd rather be doing, being outside, playing, something like that. And it's, sometimes when we're teaching people, certain skills, we don't do a good job of conveying the purpose, the why around what's the purpose for why we're doing this? Why is this important? Why are we making investments in the future? And, to me, it all comes back to that. Otherwise, we leave them curious about what the purpose of what we're doing here is.
Connie, the title of the podcast is Curiosity, How It Transforms Leadership and Sparks Employee Engagement. Thoughts? What's going through your mind?
Well, the first thing that came to me when you said about working in, having these communication and conversation with your children, I have 5. So I have some experience in that, just from that perspective, and being able to take that into the workplace. And to add on what Fort said, sharing with them, helping them understand the goal, but it's also understanding where they're at, because people do have different learning capacities, different learning skills, or a different reason why they need to know why that has to happen. And again, with my 5 children, it was a good learning experience for me, because all 5 of them had a different reason. Why do I have to do my math homework? Because I'm not planning to be an engineer. And so having those different conversations within the workplace starts with understanding where they're at, where they're coming from, and their reasoning why they need to know that.
Michael, you work with large brands, large departments, various diverse organizations. Does that curiosity help you in your purpose and your cause?
Oh, most certainly. As the Chief Customer Officer of Saterman Connect, my goal is to really understand where the organization is and what success will look like. At the same token, when we're launching leadership academies, it's important to always remember that adult learners want to know where they're going. They want to know what their journey might look like. So if you're serving up just a moment and all it feels like is a moment, there's a myriad of questions, but knowing what the future might look like, what the shared intentions might be, where there's an opportunity to collaborate, can serve into people's curiosity. It lets them know the lane that they're going to be traveling into. And whether it's working with a department at a large pharmaceutical firm or with a small company, it's key to understand they want to be able to measure success, but also find their way forward and contribute to it.
Yeah, I agree with that on so many different dimensions, right? When people are leaning forward and asking a question, I mean, I don't know a better way to find and how to shape that intention, because they're kind of giving that open door, I think, and that's some of what you're saying. I want to kind of turn to the comments here. We've got a number of people who've chimed in already. We've got people from Saudi Arabia, Abdul Aziz. We've got Ankush from India. We've got Prim from Kenya. We've got Abby from Nigeria. We've got people all from all over the place who are joining us. We've actually got Jawad from Pakistan. We've got people from all over the world who are joining us. And again, 200 people that signed up. So I think we've got a number of people. Please take a couple moments here and type into the comments where you're connecting from. And if you're watching the replay, just type in pound replay so that we know where you're coming afterwards. Curiosity and data, though, I want to kind of make that connection there, because lots of times when people look at data, they just kind of take it as a fact. When in fact, oftentimes data isn't really just a fact. It's just kind of a record of what happened in the past. And if you look at data with a little bit of curiosity with you and yourself and your team, it opens new doors to new possibilities and new behaviors. Connie, I'll start with you. How does that statement resonate with you, and how does your professional experience touch that?
I mean, that's actually something that we're going through right now with the agency. And I had mentioned that earlier today. We've been sitting through a strategy session, and that's exactly what we're looking at. How do we look at data that it's more than a number? But how do we look at data where it's really supporting the organization? Because when we took a step back, and one of the things that came out of our conversation is that it's a very multi-layer conversation. And, we're looking at the digital space and we're relying on that data. But how do we take that data, that AI, and turn it from a never-ending roller coaster, to those exhilarating highs, and we have, some really frustrating lows. But how can we take that? Because we're feeling, in a sense, in the last couple of years, that we're almost trapped in a cycle of those ups and downs. So, we've been taking a very proactive look at that, and how do we turn that into looking at the patterns of our buyers, the patterns and the successes, and also the failures that, we can't forget about that. So really taking a look at tracking that, taking these numbers and really going deeper into the organization where it turns into a conversation with our buyers, so we have that long-term growth within the organization.
I want to ask some of the audience, do you all see that as well? When you see data, are you looking at it, are you and your team looking at it from a place of curiosity? Are you looking at it as, hey, that's what's going to happen, and that's what's always going to happen? So I'm looking for a yes or a no, a Y or an N in the comments. Do you look at your data with curiosity as an organization? I'd love for you to type that into the comments. I also have a comment here from Jawad. Says the exploration of curiosity as a transformative force in leadership and its profound impact on employee engagement is a vital conversation in today's ever-evolving workplace. Michael Satterman, thoughts about that comment?
Well, I mean, for me, it comes back to really appreciating curiosity when we are young, I have a young daughter too. She's small as well. And everything to her is brand new. So there's curiosity because it's uncertainty. But as we get older, somehow we're supposed to know all the answers, which is not true. And if you embrace a growth mindset, where can we give people the space to think about what a future might look like, what success might look like? Also, every employee wants to have their own professional journey of growth. So if you're understanding that they are not going to play the same role at all points in time, hopefully they want to be stretched, they want to find success within the organization, they want to elevate themselves. There's a degree of curiosity around that as well. They know they don't know the answers, and hopefully if they approach the day believing they do know the answers, as a leader, you can encourage them to think a little differently, to be curious about the things they don't know and explore a little bit. We have to give them the freedom to be innovative by allowing them to be curious.
There's a refrain that a lot of people use, and I actually don't like it very much. It's that whole do more with less. Well, actually, I don't know if it's possible to do more with less. You're actually just maintaining where you currently were. For me personally, it's always about leveling myself up to the next level. How do I get better? And well, with this, maybe another way to say that is, how do I level myself up with the same set of resources that I have today? Because I'm constantly raising my game. So first of all, Jawad, I appreciate you asking that question and spurring that conversation. Fourth, as a coach of leaders, how do you respond to that?
I'm thinking about a conversation I had with my brother about 2 hours ago. We had lunch together at our favorite restaurant down the street. We were talking about the perspective of, going back to the theme of children and curiosity of a child. And we're both new parents. I have 3 young kids. He has 2 younger even kids. And, the empathy you start to build for your parents, you always have this feeling that your parents know everything, have all the answers when you're young, even though you don't like all the answers they have. And, we're sort of experiencing that now. And when I think about this in relation to your question about data and the interpretation of it, I think about how, do we really have a curiosity for the data we're reading to be able to extract the information that we need instead of the information we want? Are we approaching it from an objective standpoint so that we can make really good decisions based on that? I think that's the way that we're going to be able to excel in this avenue.
Yeah, I think we got to inspect and find more from what we're seeing, as opposed to just kind of staying at the status quo. I'd like to bring up, so I'm very much I'll tell you another story. Growing up as a kid in high school, physics was my favorite class. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a propeller head there. But you could tell me all the theory in the world and talk till the cows came home. But until I got to see the practical application of it, it didn't mean a lot to me. So basically that means is when we got to crash billiard balls and throw things at the wall and crunch metal is when I started to get really excited, because I start to see the physics in action. So we're talking about all this curiosity. We're talking about all this data. I'd like to bring up some slides here where we can take a look at some visuals that show us data from a company. So if we can bring those up on screen, what that'll allow us to do is to investigate a little bit more about some of this data, what we're seeing, and kind of how we can see where that curiosity leads. So let me start first with this slide. What we're looking at here is just this radar graph, this circular graph here. And what you'll notice is that anything's on the outside edge where you see that A+, the more effective, you want blue, lots of blue. That means they're excelling in their role. When you see these the blue dots kind of here where it says less effective, where the dots are closer in the center, someone in a particular role is not as effective in their role. So we're talking about employees, someone who works in a particular role at an organization. And when you see some of the dark gray shining through, that means that's the average. The average is better than how this employee. So this blue area shows you how that employee is performing in this role. Can you go to that next slide for me? Because I'd like to show them an individual. And is there a way to zoom in a little bit here so we can take a look at it? All right. So we're looking at a hypothetical person named Christopher. And if we go around a little bit, starting up at 12 o'clock, kind of going to 1 o'clock, employee objectives align with personal professional desires. You can see that blue is a little further out towards the edge. So they feel like they agree with that. That's a place of excellence for them, much more so than average. This next one says, I build custom performance plans for each person. So this leader is saying, I do, but they don't build them custom performance plans as much for each one of their employees as the average, perhaps as other leaders. I conduct routine performance evals. They do routine performance evals. I routinely conduct employee experience surveys. You can kind of see that there's some areas that they are much more effective. This leader is much more effective in what they're doing. And those are the areas where the blue is outside. But, around 10 or 11 o'clock, it says I use data objectively to improve performance. They don't use it to objectively improve performance. You can kind of see for Christopher how he's showing up as a leader in this role. So I'm going to kind of throw this out here. We're seeing some live data from an organization. We're seeing where this leader is really effective and where they're less effective based on data. I'm curious what you all think. Michael, I'll start with you. Any thoughts that come to mind, just sort of a gut feel when you see this?
Well, I think one of the first questions is, where and how has this leader been trained to understand the value of data? Where are they comfortable? Where are they getting overwhelmed? One of the biggest challenges around data collection is, of course, what gets measured gets done, but have you picked the right metrics to begin with? And if there's not been training or clarity about which metrics matter and how that metric can be interpreted, that team member doesn't have a baseline understanding of the value of data. So they may just look at the data and see gobbledygook, and that's okay. We don't have to know everything. So one of my first questions is, where and how have they been trained to understand the data before them? I'm assuming the data that we're measuring is valuable stuff, but let's first have a baseline of what it means.
So what I'm hearing is something I think maybe Forth, you said at the kind of the top of the show, this idea that what the words that might be coming out, or Connie yourself, what words might be coming out of our mouth may not be the same words that somebody else is understanding, or they're taking it a different way. And if we've got a disconnect there, it sounds like there needs a question that needs to be asked. Am I hearing that right, Michael?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think, Connie, forgive me if I don't know, but Forth and myself might be able to lean in and say, coaching questions, right? In what ways is this data serving us? Also, how are we encouraging that curiosity and that challenge? When you're telling people what to do, you're not giving them the freedom to be curious. When you're teaching them, you're helping them understand the steps. But when you're coaching them, you're giving them the free rein and sitting back and letting them probe and acknowledge. Connie, as a leader, I'm certain you're used to that approach. And I think that for our audience, it's important to find ways to give people the space to be vulnerable and to have the graciousness to say, that's a great question. Even if you don't know the answer, I don't know the answer to that question. Let me dig in deeper.
Connie?
Yeah, thank you. I'm agreeing with everything that you're saying, Michael. And again, somebody can look at this and see a big blob on, on a piece of paper. But as a leader, and one of the things that I work very much on with my team is being a coach for them and giving them the free will, if you will, to be able to explore, to have that curiosity. How can we do things differently? And to really create a safe space for them that they can come back and say, hey, you know what, we've done it this way for the last 16 years, or you've done it this way for the past 16 years. Can we take a look at doing something differently? And then that opens up a whole new conversation with other members of the team. And again, allowing them, giving them that opportunity, giving them that freedom, that free will to come back and ask those questions without fear of, oh, I don't want to sound crazy or stupid or like I don't know what I'm doing. But questions, and when you ask questions, that opens up other questions for other people on the team, because they may have wanted to ask them and not quite sure how, or if it was something relevant, but allowing them to have that curiosity to go for, I think, is a very strong measure of a company, and educating them on a process like this, like you said at the beginning, Michael, that as long as I understand what that measure is, then they're going to look at it differently themselves. And this is how we can look at that data differently.
So, Forth, I want to give you a chance to say something as well, but we've got a couple people who've jumped into the comments here. We've got Halal, who's jumped in from Bangladesh. Halal, thanks for joining us. We've also got Junaid from Bangladesh. Thanks so much for joining us as well. Blessing put a comment in, and I think this relates to curiosity in data. It opens up new worlds and possibilities by being curious. You'll be able to see new worlds and possibilities that are normally not visible. They are hidden behind the surface of normal life, and it takes a curious mind to look beneath the surface and discover these new worlds and possibilities. Thank you, Blessing, for adding that in. I would love to see any other comments or thoughts or nuggets that you're getting as an audience throughout the course of this. What are Michael, Connie, and Forth saying that you agree with, or that's a take-home message for you? Forth, any thoughts yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I keep this meme pretty close to me all the time that I saw a while back as a coach. And it's a good reminder to me. It says, a coach's job is not to be the expert, have all the answers, to do the job of the leader. It's to ask great probing questions, to listen really well. I really enjoyed listening to you talk about that, Connie. But as I look at this chart, getting a little more into the tactical part of this, without knowing this person, and again, presuming that we've got great questions, we're measuring the right things and we're getting the right data from it. I'm looking at somebody that understands, is a good tactician here with the organization. But when we get around to that 11 o'clock there, they use the data objectively to improve performance. And, they're really low on that. They're really failing in that. And that is a reflection to me as their leader or as a coach of someone in that position, that they've not been given, as Michael talked about, the vision of why we're going, where we're going and why we're going, the purpose of what we're doing here. And so this data is so amazingly informative that, a lot of times as coaches and leaders, we kind of have a feeling in our head that, hey, I think this is going on. But to have a tool like this that's just so invaluable, I think you can really make an impact with data like this.
Yeah, I love what you did there, Forth. You kind of started to tell a little bit of the story, right? And once you kind of ask the right questions, the right story, the right narrative starts to come forth, and you can start to. And I think this is really kind of part of the trick that I've used. So once I start, the data starts to tell me what the story is, I can say, is that the story I really want to occur? Now I have an opportunity to say, all right, now I'm aware of what's happening. Do I want to change something to make it work a different way? And you couldn't do that unless you leaned in with that layer of curiosity. So I'd like to maybe flip to another slide here. Just let's take a look at another leader in an organization where someone has taken some of this. And if we can scroll in just a little bit so we can see. So up at the top, starting at 12, we can see this leader is clearly in a different place. I mean, they're better than average in most every other area. Understanding my employees, they're about average in terms of what they say. But you can see I spend adequate time with my people. I routinely review my leadership effectiveness down around 5 o'clock. I routinely conduct employee effectiveness and leadership assessments and experience assessments. They're doing well. Forth, maybe I'll start with you just because you ended. The story I'm seeing with this leader is these people are moving, shaking a little bit here and creating a great team. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, that's what the data would tell me, obviously. I'm a little perplexed by the, call it 9 o'clock. I understand my employees. It seems like based on all of the other feedback we're getting here from the graph, that would be a little bit more outside of the mean. So any number of things could be impacting that. So I would really be curious to understand why that is a little short compared to how well they're doing against the rest of the averages.
Yeah, and it could be just someone who is just naturally gifted at having conversations, being empathetic with their people, but doesn't claim it as a win for themselves. That's sort of the idea that comes to mind. Michael, any thoughts yourself? What are you seeing?
Well, I think if we focus a little bit about understanding the employees, I start being curious around, have they received feedback? So they may think that they understand their employees, but their employees are giving signals or language or intentionality that you really don't understand me, or they may have a low emotional intelligence, a low EQ, and therefore not know how to gauge or judge that space with others. And again, this is probably where they're fitting against their counterparts across the organization. So they may be over-indexing, and there may just be others who find ways of creating better connection overall than this particular individual.
So I see that we've got Jawad, who's asked for a visual. So Jawad, we'll reach out to you afterwards so you can figure out how to get this for your organization. By taking these graphs and taking all the data that people see, you can very quickly get a snapshot of an individual. And we've gone to some organizations where we've been able to take 15, 20, 75,000 rows of data and put it into a visual like this and very quickly give you a sense of what's happening, whether it's a qualitative survey like this or assessment like this, or something that's around KPIs that you typically measure, and seeing all these KPIs and where their strengths have some strength and where they have some need. Connie, thoughts running through your head?
The first thing that came to me as well about understanding the employees, my question was, my curiosity, who completed this? Was it the person themselves or was it the employees also feeding that information in? So where did that understanding of my employees come from? Is that from the individual themselves? Because what I see from every other sector of the index is that they're well educated, they're always looking ahead to processes, procedures, but they still just might be lacking on the emotional intelligence with the people around them.
Yeah, it's amazing how much just from a bunch of numbers you can kind of start to tell a story here, right? I mean, we're talking about somebody hypothetical here, and just we've changed the names, we've brought data across, and all of a sudden, even though this person might be sitting in Topeka, Kansas, I don't know where they're sitting, right? Wherever they're sitting, we're already starting to get a little bit of the story of what's happening. And again, this can be used for hard metrics and data, or it can be used for qualitative measures just like this. And all of a sudden, the story is starting to come out. And Connie, I think what I heard from you is this idea that now you can start asking deeper, more probing questions that uncover the truth that's underlying. Is this person maybe just a little shy, scared of being arrogant, and when in fact there should be every reason for them to be confident.
Right, and there should be some, there might be some coaching needed there in that regard to helping that person, like you said, maybe they're shy or bringing them out so they can have more conversations. And there's people that are very intelligent, but they just can't make that emotional connection. So then it also goes back to the company. What are they looking at in terms of the strengths that they want for this individual to have within that company? Is it hurting or helping them?
Yeah. Thanks. We've been getting some more comments in here. Jawad says the empathy graph is amazing. I love it. You can be a data analyst with the help of the empathy graph, even if you don't know anything about the data part, the data stuff. I appreciate you writing that in, Jawad. I would love for anybody else who's listening in, what other things you're getting out of this. Is this making sense to you? Are you seeing that same story? Are you feeling the same way when you see these graphs? Do you get those same narratives that are coming out? Let's switch to one more, just because we've seen two different types of people. Let's maybe switch to a third one. I won't even do this one. I'll let you all start first, because this one is just a completely different person than the first two we saw. Connie, can I start with you? What are you seeing with this person here?
I'm still going around. This is all right, so they are lacking on the employee side. So they spend adequate time, but what are they spending adequate time on? It looks like they're lacking a lot of the different skills, aligning personal and professional. Even on the personal and professional development, looks like that's where they're spending a lot of time at high at 76. But if you go down, they understand revenue, the gross revenue, the bottom line. That's only at a 1. So somebody that would be coming into coaching this individual, there would be a lot of conversations happening here as to how they're helping the growth of the organization. And again, it's just not on a personal, this is how I feel or this is how I see you behaving, but this is coming from the numbers. And so, we have proof positive here that we're showing you that there's some areas here that you're lacking and that we really need to work on.
So, Michael, let's kind of bring this back a little bit to sort of the topic, right? Curiosity, how it transforms leadership and sparks employee engagement. Let's assume that this is a self-eval from a leader, putting this in about themselves. How does this transform that leadership of that leader themselves, and how would they be able to spark employee engagement by seeing something like this? What would you think? I think you might be on mute. All the good stuff came out already, right? Uh-oh, your mute's still there.
And sorry, it's interesting when I look at this data, the first thing I thought of was this employee a great subject matter expert who was promoted into a position of management without being equipped for what the role of management entails, right? So they seem to be some gaps in regards to analysis, data analysis, revenue and financials. So if they're used to doing the job and now they're elevated into a position where they have to let go of doing the day-to-day, there may be an area of opportunity where the organization could be investing in their leadership development. So that's the first piece I feel. They may also be stepping into a space as a new leader and looking at the leaders around them who are doing an excellent job and acknowledging where they're not yet taking action and they could be taking action. So where can they start to look to their peers and start to find the safe haven to say, you know what, I noticed that you use data objectively to improve performance, other leader. Can you help me understand this? I know our managers talked about this a few times and I just don't seem to be getting it yet. Right? There's embracing vulnerability, but also the curiosity just to have a conversation.
And fourth, I want to hear from you. How does this spark that employee engagement? I mean, so you've got this leader who's been saying for a long time, do as I tell you, do as I tell you, as opposed to the way I do it, because they've been doing things their own way for a little while, and all of a sudden they have a team of people behind them to go on Michael's analogy here, and the people are not able to follow them. They don't get it. How do you spark that employee engagement? How does that leader spark employee engagement from that?
That's a great question. Any number of ways, I would imagine. I would start with curiosity. And in this role, that should be a requirement, especially if we're talking about the type of person that Michael's posed in here. And, as I look around at all of these measures here, the one thing that sticks out to me on all of them is that almost all of them are hard science type measurements. And then we've got that I understand my employees. Before we're talking about build custom performance plans, conduct routinely conduct, routinely review, things like that. But then we get to that I understand my employees, and that's that soft science, that high EQ that Michael mentioned that just might be lacking here. As far as spiking that enthusiasm, I go back to the old violin I play. It's purpose and vision. Where does this team member understand where we're going, why we're going there, why it's so impactful, how they can benefit, and how the people around them can grow along with them? Because, again, I think you said it too, Michael, that, they may have come from a role that required these, build the widget, just place it on the conveyor belt. And now we're in this role this is not a do the job anymore. This is a leadership position, I presume. And so, we want to make sure that they've got the right skills there, that we're sparking that enthusiasm there.
I want to go to the audience. We've gotten some comments. I'd love to hear more of what you're seeing. We've gone through 3 of these empathy graphs here that kind of give you an understanding through the data as to how people are showing up. In particular, this leader, I think his name is Raymond, how Raymond is showing up. Do you all see the same story? I would love to hear kind of yes or no. Do you all see the same story that we're talking about here, that Michael suggested, this idea of a leader who was technically very, very adept at their role? They've been now cast into this leadership role, and they're running it from a technical capability as opposed to a personality point of view. Because leadership, in my mind, is not about technical capability anymore. It's more about the personality and getting people to see that mission and purpose, that violin that I've heard Fourth play before. I'd love for you to put that into the comments and share your opinion, your perspective on that. So we've looked at 3 graphs now, and we've looked at some data. These are all qualitative assessments that we send out to leaders that we've changed the names on. Seeing that data, being able to understand a little more of the narrative, we've used this word curiosity a couple of times in our conversations here. Is that all that's required to get people to move to that next tier of leadership? Is it just that simple? It seems like we've been saying a lot of things that say this is a step forward. Is that all that's required? Fourth, I'll start with you.
I think it's not all that's required. I think it is the first thing that's required. Curiosity breeds a number of things. Intimacy, can reduce aggression, stress tolerance, but it also helps us push boundaries, challenge assumptions, and seek to understand other people, other things. And so I think that it's sort of the foundation for that next step there into that role.
Gotcha. Connie?
I'm going to add on to that, seek to understanding. And I've had individuals in type of positions where I've done some consulting where they have moved, an excellent example that Michael had used, from a role that they were very good at into a management role, but not truly understanding what it took to be the leader in that type of position, that they still want to get in there, they still want to be hands-on. But I just think that's, the number one thing is be curious, learn as much as you can, be a lifetime learner. And that's what's going to take you to that next level in the organization where you want to go.
And I don't think the process, I think reading between the lines a little bit here, that process doesn't stop. Just be curious and learn it one time. It is be curious, learn it one time, and then come back and, hey, what I learned last time, was that right? And the analogy that I give people all the time is, if I want to be a fantastic soccer player, I can't keep learning till the age of 12 playing soccer and then say, all right, this is good enough for me to play in Major League Soccer. I need to change my behaviors to become a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, so on and so forth. I need to keep upgrading that. And as a leader, as someone who rolls up to somebody, I think that curiosity needs to exist. Michael, thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, I love what Forrest, Connie, Vinay, what you've all said about, in basic terms, embracing a growth mindset. I think there's actually two elements at play here. One is, how do I, as a new leader or as a mid-tier or even as a senior leader, embrace the leadership opportunities before me? But there's also the other aspect, which is, how is the organization preparing that individual to embrace their role as a leader? Are they investing in them? Are they guiding them on that journey? Because just because you give someone a title does not mean they are a leader. I will disagree with anyone who shares there are natural born leaders. That is not the case. You learn in some way, shape, or form how to lead, how to get the most out of your team. It's not about getting the pat on the back, but helping that team to accomplish its goals. That requires some skills that are not inherent within many of us. And where there's opportunity for the organization to help that person see a future version of themselves as a leader is a great way for them to co-create that journey to help them take those next steps.
So I'd love to ask a question of the audience, anybody who's listening in here today live or in the replay. Natural born leaders, is true or false? Is that, do you believe that people are born or are they created over time? I think I tend to side with you, Michael. People may have some personality traits that can be harvested to make them great leaders. But skill over the long term always beats talent, right? You may have a set of talent up front, but you got to continue to practice that skill to become really good at it. And I think leadership is kind of like that, right? Fourth, would you say the same thing?
That's a great question. I'm not sure exactly where I stand on it. I do believe that there are natural born leaders. I don't necessarily believe that only leaders are natural born, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I was screwing around on the internet preparing for this a little while ago, and I just simply looked up the definition of curiosity, and I'll read it out to you. I've got it before me here. One is a desire to know or learn. Another is an object that arouses interest as being novel or extraordinary. And the last one, this is the one that got me. A desire to know about people or things that do not concern one, nosiness. The reason that stood out to me is that I think any qualified leader, anyone that's even got a chance of being a good leader, you better be interested in people, interested in their story, how they got to where they are, why they're here, all the kind of the who, what, why, when, how things they used to teach us on framing out our papers in high school. I found that really interesting as part of the definition of curious, but to the question, I'm undetermined.
Connie, you got any thoughts on the topic?
I think there's a little of both. And I know that that's been an argument for years, whether it is one or the other. I definitely believe that it can be a learned skill. And when we're hiring people, one of the things that we look at, they can come to us with the skill. They know how to build that widget, but we are looking for that EQ. We are looking, are they lifetime learners? Are they curious to continue learning within that? Because if they do, then there's that possibility that they will become that next leader in the organization. So I think there's a little bit of both.
Well, let's see. I got a couple more comments here that have popped in. Jawad says, I believe visualization can help have an idea about everything that includes the leader himself, the team, the productivity, the profitability, and anything about the organization that you can think about. I think what I'm hearing from you, Jawad, is just this idea that being able to take a look at the story and being able to understand the story more deeply helps you understand what's happening. Because if you don't know what's happening, you really can't ask the right question either. You need to know, the analogy I give people is it's why people love maps, because you can always pinpoint where you are. And you go to the mall, you go drive to Disney World, you can find out where you are in the United States right now and say, all right, I got to go from here to here. But then you can start asking the right questions. But if you can't even locate where you are, you kind of got a little bit of a problem trying to get to the right location. We're getting to the tail end of the time. We've got about another 13, 14 minutes. I want to kind of go around the horn here, and we've kind of covered sort of the waterfront in terms of curiosity and data and sort of transforming leaders and employees. I'd love to hear kind of how you would wrap it all together. If someone were to say, hey, I'm going to start with you, Forth. Someone would say, all right, Forth, go. What would you say that they would need to jot down for themselves as the take-home message, and what can they use to practice it, or some exercises to get better at?
Great question. I'll go back to one of the definitions of curiosity. It's just being interested in people. I think that a lot of times we put ourselves in situations where we're all self-involved. At the end of the day, we care about ourselves a whole lot, and we go into any situation thinking about, for lack of a better term, what can we get out of it with them? What's in it for me? And one of the things that I've tried to do over the years is I've always been really interested in people, and just ask questions. Just be curious about people. Learn where they're from. Just start with where are you from? That was one of my favorites. I went to boarding school in high school, so that was always a good kind of icebreaker. And just see where that goes. People like to talk about themselves, but just be curious about people. People are really interesting. Their perspectives, their backgrounds. There's so much about people that you just don't know by passing them on the street or working beside them in a cubicle unless you ask. So just being curious about people would be the takeaway that I would have.
Brings me back to that story I told you in the beginning about my kids and doing the math homework. It was my son who asked that. He wants to be an engineer, and he asked one day why he's got to do his math homework. And I went and I started to give him draw him a picture of how, because he wants to be a civil engineer. I said, do you know how a civil engineer comes up with all the designs and the plans that do it? He had never thought of that. And then all of a sudden walked him through that. He was like, oh, and I haven't asked him to do his math homework again since then because of that. And it was all shrouded behind this idea of, I don't know what's in it for me, but just kind of being curious and asking, so why are you asking that question? I don't understand how it connects. And all of a sudden, I don't have to ask anymore. Michael, thoughts from your side, sort of take home messages and maybe practices that people can engage at home.
Yeah, I love what Forth shared, and I would sort of encapsulate it as curiosity is about letting go of being right. And it is immensely powerful when paired with cultural humility. So it is wonderful to ask someone where they're from, things about their lives, but it's also as powerful to stop presuming you know something about someone by the way they answer that question. Always ask the next question about the same topic. So if I ask someone where they're from, maybe my next question is, what was that like? Talk to me about some of your experiences. How do you think that may translate to where we are today? Now you're really understanding their lived experiences, and especially in a time when so many of our young people are asking leaders to let go of telling them what to do and respecting the knowledge they may already have and where they may be able to contribute can be immensely powerful. That is where you get true engagement and conversation. When leaders ask the question and presume to already prepare the next question or presume to be able to answer the question themselves and just aren't really listening, that's not going to serve you as a leader. I think there's a ripe opportunity for today's leaders to embrace a bit more curiosity with some of that humility.
So a thought that came to mind when you were saying that, Michael, and I'm curious if this has kind of gone through other people's minds or that it makes them hesitate. And that is, I think in the day and age that we live in, lots of people are scared of offending others by asking a question. So they never bother to ask for fear of offending someone. And I will tell you, growing up as a kid, I probably ticked off a lot of people. Actually, I didn't really care. I just because I was curious, and I just wanted to know the answer. And I found for myself that oftentimes people actually appreciate my name, Vinay. Most people don't ask me. Some people take the time to say, Vinay, how do you appreciate your name? I remember who those people are that ask me that. Any comments or thoughts on that idea of curiosity being sort of a secret superpower, just endearing people to you?
If I can just
Michael,
chime in, I'm sorry, I'm a little hungry on this topic. Yeah, I'm just hungry on this topic because we focus on inclusive leaders and encouraging people to stop being safe and be a little bit brave. There's two parts to that relationship. I'm going to be vulnerable in that I don't have all the answers. So I'm going to ask a question. And also it's the way you ask that question. I'm asking because I don't know. And so if you'll give me the space, let me ask. It also requires, as a transaction, a bit of grace on the other side, right? People are asking what could be otherwise an embarrassing question, which maybe they should know the answer. I think when we're talking about aspects of equity, inclusion, and belonging, it's critical that we know that we don't have all the information, but if we're hungry to learn, as Connie keeps expressing, it's an opportunity to learn about someone else's world. What was it like growing up in that space? How are you navigating the world today? Do you see leaders like yourself within the organization? And if not, how can we help you become the first? There's a myriad of ways we can unpackage that. And people end up being so cautious because they fear they're going to be judged. And I think that most people have positive intent. And if we all approach the world a little bit more that way, there's going to be a bit more, perhaps, gracefulness in our world.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for me, that's always been the case, right? The intent is just because I am just honestly curious about them more than proving myself right. Connie, how about yourself? Closing thoughts?
A couple of things that I wanted to go back, like what Michael just said, positive intent. I'll share a story of my son, and he had become a leader in his organization. He became a manager, and he was fearful of saying the wrong thing to his team. Not so much fearful of being judged, but fearful of saying the wrong thing to his team because of the diversity, the inclusion, all of the above. So we had a long conversation around that. And the best advice that I gave to him, which I believe worked for him, was I said, go back to your team and talk to them about how they can communicate best within their team for the best results and the best outcome. And I know my son, he's not very expressive and he doesn't ask a lot of questions. So I encouraged him to be more forthcoming and to ask those questions, ask those follow-up questions. And so that really, he came back about 6 months later and said that truly made a difference for him and being that new leader within that organization. And he's only continued to grow, over that time. But I just want to leave some of my comments is, to be curious. We could talk about the different, ages within an organization, those generational gaps that we might have in an organization. Everyone has different beliefs from their culture. So be open to own your beliefs, but be open to look at it differently and to ask questions of other people and to understand other people, and not to be so afraid, because we are really, so many people are just so afraid of saying the wrong thing to somebody right now that we hold that in, that we hold that back. And we can't do that if we want to live it happily, who we are as individuals, but who we are also within the culture of the organization. So we have to have more conversations and more and more education around that.
Yeah. Well, we've got 5 minutes left here, and I wanted to kind of summarize a couple of, I should say thank you to a couple of folks. We've had a number of people who have been putting information into the comments or typing questions or reflections in the comments, and I really do appreciate the audience for showing up and doing that, taking time out of your day to pay attention, to listen, to reflect on some of those thoughts. I appreciate you all doing that. Number two, to my staff who makes this all happen. I look good because of them, nothing else. And I promise you, there's a joke within the company. I actually do 2% of it. 98% is done by somebody else. They make me look fantastic. So to Prim, Janine, and Halal, thank you so much for all the time you put into and the dedication you put into making this thing all happen. But fourth, Connie, Michael, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as me. I think it furthered a little of my thinking, even though I thought I had a good handle of things. It even tweaked my perspective a little bit. And for that, I thank you, and I appreciate you spending all of your years of experience and perspective with all of us.
Welcome.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you so much. We'll look forward to seeing you in the reposts over the course of the next couple of months as we put this out on LinkedIn and other social platforms. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.